Eric Ressler, thanks so much, founder of Cosmic and head creative as well. Yeah.
Yeah, creative director. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much from Santa Cruz. So that's awesome. I'm a Bay Area guy myself. Santa Cruz, do people call it the Bay, right? They call it the Bay, or do they? I don't.
It's a point of controversy. We're kind
Yeah.
of we're technically part of Monterey Bay,
Yeah, figured as much. Yeah.
so not San Francisco Bay,
Yeah.
but we're kind of our own little place, honestly. Like we
I
don't
get
really
that
fit
vibe.
neatly into either of those.
Yeah, that's awesome. You come over the ridge and then you're in Silicon Valley, whatever. So that's awesome. Well, thanks so much. We'll get away from geography here for a second. I was inspired by what I saw about what Cosmic does, and it kind of fits really nicely with what we're talking to orgs about all the time. And I just, I jotted down three things. If you don't mind telling us maybe the origin story of Cosmic, and then we can get into how you help nonprofits if that works.
Sure. So we're a social impact creative agency. So we serve nonprofits, foundations, B Corps, and some government entities as well.
Hmm.
And we're a creative agency. So we work with these organizations to really help them nail their impact story, build brand awareness, inspire action, some of these kind of core things that
Yep.
modern social impact organizations need to do to win in the attention economy.
You said it. The attention is there, right? Or that's what they're at least they're going for. And of course, the donor landscape and folks that want to get involved, they're changing. We're constantly telling folks like understand who your audience is. Donors are consumers at the end of the day. So what an organization like yours does is like let's find the attention. This is where we need to go. And we talk to folks and we've done a bunch of webinars, a bunch of podcasts, worked with a bunch of different orgs on a coaching level about getting your mission's message succinct, synonymous across the entire organization, your board, your committee, every employee. Just so when anyone says anything about your org, charity XYZ, it's like you can say it in 10 words or less. And that's what I hear when you say help orgs develop their impact story. Is that kind of what I'm sensing?
That's definitely part of it. One
Yeah.
thing I think that's really consistent when people come to us, at least, is they come to us and they say, we're just having a hard time telling our story.
Yep.
And when we unpacked that a little bit with most clients, what we realize is that it's not just about how to tell their story, but even what the story should be.
Yeah.
So, and I think that that is a common challenge, especially in the social impact space, where a lot of these organizations are wearing a lot of hats, doing a lot of stuff,
Hmm.
have multiple programs spun up, their mission, they might even be experiencing some mission creep, which I think can go too far, certainly. Sometimes though, it's also just about being clear about what their niche is within the larger social impact ecosystem. So
Hmm.
how do they actually create an impact? Who are they serving? What are their unique strengths, differentiators as an organization? And how can they articulate that clearly? Because if we start to look at some of the most intractable issues that a lot of these organizations are working to solve, there's often many organizations working towards solving those issues in different ways. And
Correct.
so if you're thinking about this with empathy from a donor's perspective or a supporter's perspective, how can you first of all capture their attention, but then convince them that your cause or your organization is worth supporting in the
Yeah.
first place? So that is, it's not just about telling a snappy marketing story. It's about having real clarity around purpose for the organization. And then from there, that can branch out into effective messaging.
I love that. A couple things. I'm a big believer in yeah, it's like a you like blue water, blue ocean strategy and things like that. Of course, from a marketing perspective, it's like it's easier to get things done in the open space, right? But you just said there's a lot of crossing, of different impacts and organizations kind of working towards the same end result, right? Or towards some kind of help and some kind of future. I'm a huge believer. You said different, and I'm a huge believer in differentiation over competition, over going head to head with those orgs. It's like, hey, they're great. We play well with others, but this is what we do. And I think that's really, really important for a lot of orgs to hear that and think about that and quantify that. And then another layer, Eric, is I'm noticing there's a with the donors landscapes changing as the population gets a little bit older, the population that have resources. And you probably have done some research. I'm assuming that you have, of course. And donors are giving to multiple organizations in a way that we haven't seen in the past. Can you speak to that a little bit? Have you seen any of that or?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think there, in certain ways, there's definitely that generational shift happening in giving and
Hmm.
newer generations coming in and wanting to get involved and give in different ways than past generations. I think the trends that we've seen and we've heard from our clients who are kind of more on the front lines on this stuff is
Hmm.
that younger donors want to do more than just write checks. They want to get
Yeah,
involved. They want to have, they almost want, you use this term of being donors or consumers. I think actually maybe more, especially now, donors are investors and they want a return on
for
their
sure.
investment. And
Yeah,
it's not a financial return, but
yeah,
a return on impact and a
yeah,
return on purpose for themselves, even. And so I think
absolutely.
that's one trend. And at the same time, there's still a lot of foundational strategies and tactics that are still worth doing, including things like direct mail. That's not something that we usually employ a ton of, but we have clients who have a ton of success with some of those older tactics too. I think,
Absolutely.
especially as the digital space becomes more and more competitive
Saturated.
and
Yeah,
saturated,
yeah,
then
yeah.
you have to start to look at different tactics for breaking through the noise. I'm not saying you don't do digital, because obviously that's where so much happens, and we're big believers in developing a digital first culture for these organizations. But
Hmm.
I think it's a mix is the short answer. And what we've
Yeah.
seen is that there is no cheat sheet or checklist or magic bullet for this. Everyone needs to find their own way with their own audience and their own niche to be able to do this effectively.
I love that. I love that. And I agree wholeheartedly with you. When I say things like, and this will segue into my next question, when I say things like donors are consumers, I'm saying that because I don't want folks to overthink it. You know what I mean? I just like this, and it'll segue nicely into like you build brand awareness, whether that might be direct mail with a monthly recurring donation program, which works fantastically for certain organizations, and of course a digital presence. But when you say rebuild brand awareness, it makes me think like you're running a company, right?
Totally. Yeah.
And
And
I
I
know
think
there's huge social impact, and we're constantly sorry for interrupting, Eric, but we're constantly trying to get people to say you're a 501c3. That's a tax designation. You're still running a business. So I say the same thing. It's like donors are consumers. Let's not overthink it. You're building a brand. Think about building a brand like a company would. You know what I mean? And like, I think it's
100%
huge.
aligned, and I appreciate that, and I
Yeah,
also understand where you're coming from with kind of just trying to keep it simple, because I do
yeah,
think this sector does tend to overcomplicate some of these
yep,
fundamental things
yep.
sometimes, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but I wholeheartedly agree. We need to get the social impact sector out of the scarcity mindset, out of the starvation
Love it.
cycle, and some of that is certainly on the systems and the structures in place, and some of it is perpetuating bad habits within the organizations themselves, and even how
Yep,
we're messaging to donors. If we
yep.
run a lot of campaigns saying, hey, 100% of your donations are going directly to programs and no overhead, we're perpetuating that myth about overhead percentage being the effective way to assess an organization in this space. So I think it's definitely both, but I definitely think when it comes to these ideas around building brand awareness or even considering your organization to be a brand, that can be, I think it's becoming a lot more accepted and understood within the sector. But for some folks and some organizations, that can still be kind of a leap, a mental leap or a
That
leap of faith.
mindset.
Like, hey,
Yeah,
we're a 501c3, like we're not a brand, we're not selling stuff. But I really do think that that's starting to change, because it's just
yeah.
becoming so self-evident that how critical it is to invest in your brand and brand building and building out good experiences for your organization to be effective and sustainable.
I think it's awesome. Yeah, there is definitely a shift happening, but we're grabbing folks with both arms and just come with us to this. Yeah, it's very there's a lot of light over here. It really works great. I'm digital, print, what have you, with our own team because we speak to nonprofits. We only work with nonprofits. Eric, I'm a huge believer. We're a huge believer in coaching folks up about brevity
Mm.
and succinctness of message. How I'm not presupposing that's a challenge when you're speaking to organizations, but how important is that with how fast? I mean, we don't need to talk. I mean, people are consuming things at such a rapid level, and there's I call it plumbing. There's so much information coming in, on a daily basis with folks. It's like how important is it in a macro sense just to have the brevity of message? And do you talk to folks and coach them up, at Cosmic about this on a regular basis?
Yeah, I think it's critical. It's an interesting question because, and I've been thinking about this a lot. To me, this is actually potentially going too far, in the
Yeah.
sense that, like, this is the dark side of the attention economy, is that our attention is so disparate and hijacked that our
Mm-hmm.
capacity to absorb meaningful content is dwindling by the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, one of our favorite things to do still is to sit down and read an 800-page book about
Mm-hmm.
a world that doesn't exist, that's sci-fi,
Right.
for
Some
example, right?
dystopian deal. Yeah, yeah.
Like, that's the exact counterpoint to brevity.
That's escapism for so many people. Yeah, yeah,
So there's this interesting kind of like parallel universe happening there, where
yeah.
in our digital world everything must be brief and fast. And, it'll be interesting to see kind of how this plays out. Like, is there a tipping point there? Have we reached peak brevity? I don't know. What
Yeah.
I will say is that the opposite problem is definitely, one to be wary of, which is like we must tell our entire story and, from a very academic perspective to everyone and talk about like our program design, our methodology, and all that stuff. I think maybe what the bigger problem is when these organizations think that the story they should tell is their story. And that's actually what we typically want to flip upside down and say, no, the story we want to tell is how your supporters can help you reach your mission. So the
Yes.
supporter really needs to become the protagonist in this story.
I love
And
that.
being really clear around, not just what are your goals as an organization, what's your mission, what's your vision, all that kind of stuff, but how, like, where and how do you need help right now,
Hmm.
and making those paths for action
Hmm.
very simple, frictionless,
Hmm.
clear.
Hmm.
That's really, I think, a huge part of the focus. And you do need to start succinct, but I think there's still room for depth and breadth of information and nuance. I think actually, in certain ways, a lot of people are kind of like wanting more of that
Yeah.
instead of just, fluffy clickbait content.
Totally, totally. Speaking of that further, I'm also noticing, like you said, I love that I use the term the protagonist in the story. Those are your supporters. They're investors. They're investing in the mission. They're investing in the work. We're big believers in keeping folks apprised once they're in the fold. Obviously, this is a layered approach, correct? I mean, long term layered approach. Hopefully, the organizations that you're working with or hear this kind of message are creating their own fundamentals, right? That work. How important, and speak to this, Eric, because I think you know a lot about this. I'm getting the impression. How important is it to keep folks apprised of the work that you're doing and where you even where you are in the goal for the campaign, the end of the year campaign, and like this is the work that we're doing, and I want to say the flip side of that is when is it too much, or when have you experienced it being too much?
I think this is fundamental, and I
Yep.
think it's rarely too much. I don't think I've
Cool.
ever seen too much, if I'm being
And
honest.
when you say that, but give me like get in the weeds with me. And is it like daily emails are too much?
Okay,
Weekly
daily emails
email?
would be too much. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I
cool,
don't
cool,
I don't
cool.
know any
Let's
orgs
do
do that though.
let's right,
Maybe
right, yeah.
maybe some political campaigns. That's actually a great example of too much, but they're breaking other rules too. It's not just
Yeah.
that they're communicating too often, sometimes even multiple emails a day,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
they are essentially setting up a toxic relationship with their donors, which is a relationship of always asking and never giving.
Yeah.
So we have this kind of
Cool.
general rule of thumb that when it comes to communications for organizations like this, you want like a give ask ratio of roughly 3 to 1. So for every ask, you need to give three things of value. And that could be impact reporting or storytelling, like you're talking about. It could be, testimonials of, stories of change, good things happening.
Yeah.
A big one that I think a lot of organizations miss on is education. Like when you're supporting an organization that is working towards a cause that you care about, you're not an expert typically on that cause. You care
Hmm.
about it deeply from an emotional standpoint. But one of the biggest values that you can provide to a supporter is education around the issue, where it's at, what the challenges are, where things are going more broadly, even outside of your organization. So there's all these opportunities for giving, for providing value. And if you're not providing value to your donors who are investors, then what's the point of them supporting? And if they don't know if you're making an impact, they are, and people are looking at this, yearly, monthly, even like who am I supporting and why? And it is an emotional gift often, but
Yeah.
it's also a logical one to some degree.
For
People
sure.
usually start to give emotionally and stop giving logically.
Correct. Yeah. The heartstrings tied to the wallet a lot of times, right? That's just the reality of it. I love that, brother. We say that so much to people. It's like when you're thanking someone for a donation, don't include an envelope, please.
Yes.
Like, we say things like, oh, they're like, what do we say? And we say, well, I mean, you could start with thank you.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean,
These are
it's like,
people, right? What would you say to a
yeah.
friend? Yeah.
Yeah, I think people appreciate that so much. Or, oh, I have a major donor or someone I want to approach or whatnot, and they were just at my event, and what do I say? Say thank you.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
don't have to start by asking for money. You know what I mean? If they care, they're there taking the meeting for a reason. You can get to the money. I just think that's so lovely. And what you said, we're gonna put that out to the masses. They need to hear it. People need that. A lot of this stuff. I've used the term fundamental. A lot of the stuff I wouldn't say simple or like business 101 or fundraising 101, but a lot of these things I think resonate with folks because they're not like, I'm not saying the work that you're doing is not, creating aha moments for folks. I think, you know what I mean? I think that like in the same work that we're doing with coaching and reminding folks and doing the pod and stuff, it's like we're learning this actually because we're just really good arbiters of information, and we're seeing organizations that are successful doing it and just trying to share that and give away our best information away for free. And I just think it's great that we just continue this loop of just, constantly reminding folks that like these fundamentals work, and you need to impart these ideas and practices into your own organization for growth, right? I mean, yeah, right, right. Yeah,
And I think these shiny objects can distract you from, you got to get your house in order before you can really start to get creative. And I think, hey, I'm all for getting creative with this stuff and
yeah,
being bold and doing things differently. Like, I'm a huge fan of that. We advise clients to do that.
yeah.
But you got to have your fundamentals in order first. Like, you
I
got to
love that.
have a fundraising strategy. You have to have essentially a business plan or a strategic plan as an organization. You have to like nail some of these things first, because that gives you the freedom to experiment with more creative things.
So good.
The last thing you want is to have a super successful campaign and no infrastructure to support that and make it a sustainable effort and to build deep relationships with supporters. But that
Yeah,
happens all the time. So these organizations, either through luck or creativity, or usually some kind of combination of both, have something really successful happen, but they're not prepared for it, so they can't maximize that event. I do agree with you that one of the great things about kind of serving the sector as an expert, as an agency, is that we get to see different flavors of successful organizations and look at what they're doing and see
hmm,
patterns and see trends, and those turn into insights and things that we can use to advise other people around, hey, here's what we've seen different organizations do that
yeah.
can be really successful. Some of them are like you, some of them are not like you. Let's see what works for you.
Totally. No, I love that. I think that's great. Eric, I think that's a great spot to end. I want to invite you back because, as typical, we could have this conversation for the next 90 minutes. I want to be polite with your time. Do me a favor, tell the audience where they can find you, and I think they can reach out to Cosmic and what have you.
Yeah, thank you for your time as well. The
Yeah.
website is designbycosmic.com. That's the place to go. You can get in touch with us that way. You can see some of examples of our work. We also publish a lot of free resources and insights that you can dig into if some of these ideas resonate and you want to start to put them into practice. So
Okay.
definitely check out the website or shoot me an email, eric@designbycosmic.com.
Perfect. And we'll put all those links in the show notes if you're okay with that.
Perfect.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and we're inviting. I'm telling you right now, we're inviting you back. So
I'd love to come back. Thanks, Trevor.
Thanks so much for coming, Eric. I appreciate you, brother.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you love our podcast, click the download button, rate us, and follow us on social media at HDA Fundraising. Get out there, start fundraising, and raise more money. See you next time.